is 12:01 Eastern Time Saturday morning. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is warning Democrats they're going to vote no unless DHS funding is removed and renegotiated after that second fatal shooting by a federal agent in 2 weeks that happened there in Minneapolis, Congressman. So the White House is rejecting Democrats' demands to strip DHS funding from the measure. First off, do you think there's going to be another government shutdown? Second, how do you handle or combat the issue of funding for DHS and these threats that are coming from Schumer? I mean, are we looking at another Schumer shutdown? Because this chorus got louder on the Democratic side after that shooting on Saturday.
I sure hope Chuck Schumer learned from the last 43-day shutdown, which resulted in accomplishing zero except hurting numerous Americans. When you make the statement that you will not vote for the Department of Homeland Security bill, you are saying that you are not going to fund FEMA when we're in the snowmageddon right now with those natural disaster storms going across more than 2/3 of our nation. You're not going to fund TSA agents. You're not going to fund the Coast Guard. Why Chuck Schumer would want to play politics with that is unacceptable. Just before Saturday, Cheryl, before Saturday, the Democrats supported everything that the House passed last week. It wasn't until that shooting on Saturday. Now, because of politically charged reasons, they are willing to shut down government, to defund FEMA, to defund the Coast Guard, and defund TSA. You talk about air travel. When people can't get their planes, they can thank Chuck Schumer and the Senate and House Democrats for that.
Well, let's talk about Minnesota, because yesterday Maria interviewed several lawmakers on this issue and how to handle what has become a very explosive situation in Minneapolis. Listen to this.
If I were President Trump, I would almost think about, okay, if the mayor and the governor are going to put our ICE officials in harm's way, and there's a chance of losing more, innocent lives or whatever, then maybe go to another city and let the people of Minneapolis decide, do we want to continue to have all of these illegals? Are we going to allow our governor, attorney general, and mayor to get away with this?
I don't agree with that. The push to abolish ICE is dangerous. You have Democrats in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, now talking about shutting the government down again for the sole purpose of defunding ICE and preventing federal officials from enforcing our immigration law. That is not how we should be operating. And by removing ICE or defunding ICE or abolishing ICE, you are allowing this lawlessness to continue.
Let's remember, ICE is in a lot of places around the country and Border Patrol, and you don't have these problems anywhere but Minneapolis. That's because you've got very failed leadership on the ground there. And President Trump laid it out really well. He's offered a path for these cities to be more cooperative, to make things easier, to not have incidents and chaos. They need to turn down their violent rhetoric.
Congressman Greg Rubino is being removed from Minneapolis. Tom Homan is going to be taking over for the administration. What are your thoughts on all of this? And what is the path forward to de-escalate the situation there?
Well, first, without a doubt, it's tragic when there's a loss of life of any in these kind of situations. But it's incredible to look at President Trump's leadership. Yesterday, for him to take time to call the mayor of Minneapolis and also Governor Walz, which are two people that have not said very nice things about the president, but he's doing that to try to bring down the temperature. If you look at other cities that ICE has went into, whether it's New Orleans, whether it's Memphis, Chicago, LA, you haven't seen these kinds of interferences during the ICE procedures. So, I think that local, state, and federal people can work together for the common good to enforce our immigration laws. That is what's important.
Chairman Smith, it's always great to speak with you. We're going to be watching all of your work here. It's so important. Thank you for being here.
It's great to be with you, Cheryl.
All right.
The real cause of heartburn is often misunderstood.
Heartburn is actually caused not by stomach acid.
today, Border Czar Tom Homan will be in Minneapolis. His first order of business, he's going to meet with Mayor Jacob Frey as President Trump looks to ease tensions between the state and the White House. The president spoke with both Frey and Governor Walz yesterday and posted about it. Fox News contributor Guy Benson joins us now. Guy, so much has changed in 24 hours. Tom Homan in, Bavino out to his original post, but they say not fired. What do you think?
Well, it seems like a demotion at the very least, and my guess is President Trump, and there were some sources whispering about this over the weekend, he was watching how everything went down in this terrible, deadly incident, the response, the statements that were made by high-ranking officials, and the backlash against the untruthfulness of some of those statements, or at least the debatable nature of what they were saying. And he said, you know, enough of this. This is, among other things, a political and PR battle, and a way to lose it is to not have credibility with the public. And so he decided to send in Tom Homan, who's a very experienced guy. He understands the job through and through. He wants to take it very seriously and do it the right way. And I think that Trump going out of his way to note that Homan hadn't been involved in Minneapolis or Minnesota was sort of a blank slate moment to say, hey, this needs fresh eyes, fresh leadership. And by the way, he's reporting directly to me. That was a shakeup, and I think a needed one.
Right, and I think it's leadership, too. I'm going to take action. Kristi Noem, focus on FEMA and other things. But Minneapolis, we're going to put some fresh eyes in there that have credibility on both sides. The other thing I think to point out, too, Tom Homan's kind of iced out. You notice he wasn't on television for the last 2-3 weeks. His focus is going to be on the worst of the worst. And I sense that Bavino and company were just scooping up some people that I don't think the president was for. I mean, it was about 6 weeks ago when the president was talking about finding a way for people that have been here 20, 30 years or 15, 20 years and finding them a way of have maybe a long-term work visa with a sponsorship and that type of program. That didn't coalesce with what we were seeing.
Well, the promise was mass deportations. That applied to anyone in the country illegally, but the focus that they really targeted in terms of their rhetoric and certainly many of their actions was the worst of the worst, people with criminal records. And by the way, in the first roughly year of this Trump administration, according to ICE data, about 70% of ICE arrests were of people with criminal histories in the U.S. So that's a very good batting average. I think the thing spun out of control in Minneapolis, largely due to the left, by the way, and these roving, rogue bands of agitators that are almost like these militias running around, stalking these officers, deliberately interfering in operations, which is a crime. I think these are criminal enterprises in many cases, not just so-called peaceful protests, of course, stoked and egged on the whole way by a lot of these politicians. And I think Trump was right to finally get on the phone with the mayor and the governor. If they want things to change on the ground, they also have to give something, and hopefully Homan can broker that.
Hey, Guy, I never heard the governor or the mayor say, hey, I want peaceful protests. What I saw outside that hotel is not peaceful. Hey, I want peaceful protests. But I just heard you bit off the finger of one of the agents. That's not what I'm talking about. They have not called out anything. They've made ridiculous statements like this is about love and sticking up for your neighbor. I looked at Mike Schellenberger last night and says, I would say that almost nobody on the street knows any illegal immigrant. They're out there organized, some of which getting paid. And we see some of the transmissions, taking down license plate, moving like not like a militia, as a militia. Meanwhile, it leads us all towards a government shutdown. So they're talking about to deprive ICE of money. They're not going to fund the DHS, which means no FEMA, which means a government shutdown, means no one gets paid, including the military. Do you think Democrats are going to follow through on their threat?
Well, I think it's important to see what actually plays out in Minneapolis. I hope that finally the governor and the mayor are going to say, fine, you can have access to our jails. We'll do these transfers in an orderly fashion, and then you can pull back from the street operations. Homan has offered that. I hope they take the offer. That might impact what happens in Washington, D.C. Look, my understanding, Brian, is that ICE itself is funded for like 3 more years. So if they were to shut things down over DHS, it would be purely performative to signal, especially to their base, we're mad about ICE. It would be their 2026 version of 2020's defund the police. And in the process, they would be impacting, yes, FEMA and airport security and members of the traveling public. Do they want to shut down the Democrats, our government, again for the second time in 2 years, this time over ICE funding that they can't even stop? Maybe they've decided that resistance is good politics for them. No matter what, they're going to do it. I think it would be harmful and dumb.
I agree with you, Guy, but I also think they gain from hurting the Trump economy. And almost nothing is stopping this thing from taking off except the government shutdown. By the way, a snowstorm. Not a good time to stop emergency funding for DHS. Guy Benson, thanks so much. We look forward to listening to your radio show today. Appreciate it.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Compon.